Panther fans, we're finally here, finally truly kicking off the 2026 NFL offseason. It is Combine Week up in Indianapolis. And prior to the Scouting Combine, which really kicks into high gear on Tuesday, the top Panthers insider over at The Athletic, Joseph Person, dropped his latest offseason report detailing where the Panthers are at in terms of free agency, the draft, trades, and so much more. We're going to break down that report on this edition of Panthers Today by Chat Sports. My name is Tyler Smith, and I'll just let you know, it's completely 100% free to subscribe to Panthers Today. We're taking a lot of information coming from the Panthers insiders over at The Athletic, but that's behind a paywall of $72 per year. You're going to find that information here 100% free. We have that information so you don't have to pay for it. Hit that subscribe button. Free Panthers content all the time here on YouTube. All right, so in terms of Combine Week news and storylines that we got to talk about, kind of one of the elephants in the room for Carolina is the situation at left tackle. Obviously, we know Ikem Ekwonu down in the playoffs against the Los Angeles Rams, suffering a torn patellar tendon in his knee, basically blown out his knee, and what looks like is going to sideline him for much of, if not the entire 2026 NFL season. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it here. If the Panthers don't have their franchise left tackle, it's not going to be the easiest go of it for Bryce Young here, a guy who we know is smaller in stature and thrived in situations under a clean pocket in this past season. When things get a little muddier, the play dips for sure. So not having Ikem Ekwonu out there is going to be an issue. How will the Panthers rectify that? Person saying the following. Well, Ekwonu recovers. Coach Dan Morgan and VP of Football Operations Brant Tillis will decide whether they want a longer-term option at tackle or a stopgap. If it's the former, they could spend this week talking with and evaluating offensive tackle prospects, 5 of whom went in the first round of the Athletics' first beat writers mock draft. If it's the latter, the Panthers will consider re-signing swing tackle Yosh Nijman, an unrestricted free agent. Now, what's really unfortunate about this situation with Ekwonu is he's a guy who was in line for a contract extension, but a big-time career-altering injury, you could call it, with that torn patellar, certainly puts that those extension talks into question to some extent. They're not going to extend him right now. He's not going to be on the football field much next year, if at all. So, how much can you commit to him long-term at this current time? And look, in terms of just 2026 alone, they got to get somebody in there. They got to get somebody who they believe can play an entire season and protect Bryce Young, because not having an established left tackle outside of that, it's pretty scary, from my opinion. And if we're just thinking about replacing him with Yosh Nijman, he allowed 28 pressures on 194 pass blocking snaps in 2025. That's not very good, if you ask me. Now, if you go back to when he actually started the majority of a season, and back in 2022, he started 13 out of 17 games. He actually allowed 28 pressures, that same number, on 448 pass blocking snaps. So he can be good in that regard. He actually, where he really shined in 2025 for Carolina was in the run game. He's one of the highest graded run blocking tackles in all of football, being the Panthers swing tackle there. So I would certainly consider bringing him back, but I would also address it in the draft. I do believe that an injury like this to a guy like Icky, who may never be the same player, might cause for Carolina to go out there and find a guy who could take over that position long term. Also, you got to consider Taylor Moton. He's not getting any younger, so maybe they go out there and get a tackle who could play left tackle this season and then ends up down the line once Ekwonu comes back, hopefully healthy, takes over that right tackle spot from Moton here, and the Panthers have 2 bookend guys. Next up, the backup quarterback market. This is, not the most glamorous of all conversations to be had, but certainly one that Carolina is concerned with here. We've heard from Dan Morgan that it's pretty likely that Andy Dalton ends up getting moved off of, whether it is a trade or a cut. You save $2 million, a little bit over $2 million by trading him, just straight up $2 million flat by cutting him. And the Panthers look to add a new backup quarterback. It's a little younger, a little fresher. We've heard Dan Morgan talk about maybe a guy who can use his legs to create more time and more opportunities on certain plays. So Dalton, at this point in his career, 40-plus years old, it's just not somebody who can use his legs very effectively at that quarterback position, and not somebody who really lights much of a fire under Bryce Young either. That benching stuff happened way back when. Bryce is obviously the starter now, but a new, younger backup quarterback could potentially be the move in order to keep that kind of competitive spirit going in that quarterback room. Person saying this on the backup QB spot. Although Canales, offensive coordinator Brad Idzik, and recently hired offensive specialist Darrell Bevell were with Russell Wilson in Seattle, the former Seahawks QB is a shell of his former self and entered the league just a year after Dalton. The Panthers should look at younger options, such as Trey Lance, third overall pick in 2021, who's still only 25, and 28-year-old Tyler Huntley, if they're not re-signed by the Los Angeles Chargers and Baltimore Ravens, respectively. Personally, I would go with Snoop Huntley over Trey Lance. I've just seen him win a larger sample size of football games. And for what it's worth, he's made a Pro Bowl in his career as well. Trey Lance, more often than not, to me, looks like a guy who's never played quarterback or is not ready to play at this level. But I wouldn't be the most upset at bringing him in, or Huntley for that matter. I personally wouldn't make an investment in the offseason in terms of signing a free agent backup quarterback. I would just go after one in the draft. Why not? Why not a day 3 Taylor Green or Haynes King? Like, maybe you bring them in as a QB3, but it's not really like the best allotment of resources there. If you're looking for guys who can use their legs that are going to be picked on day 3 of the draft, if not undrafted, Taylor Green, Haynes King, those are the guys you're looking at here for some potential quarterback 2s for your Carolina Panthers in 2026. Speaking of quarterback 2s, what about quarterback 1? What about QB1, Bryce Young, and getting a contract extension here as he enters the 4th year of his NFL career? Remember, the Panthers did exercise Bryce Young's 5th-year option, which in 2027 is going to cost $27.2 million. And look, if Bryce continues the trajectory that he was on from 2025, the beginning of the 2025 season onwards, then yeah, he's going to absolutely be in line for a contract extension next offseason. No reason to jump the gun or anything and throw a boatload of money at Bryce Young now after just one good season. They have the 5th-year option for next year already locked in. If he continues to play pretty solid, then $27 million in year 5 is an absolute steal. So let's just wait, maybe pump the brakes on a Bryce Young long-term deal. Person saying, as reported here in January, the Panthers are not expected to offer Bryce Young a long-term deal before next season, preferring to let his 4th season play out, which was the timeline the Panthers followed before extending Cam Newton as well. Could that change? Maybe, but as a Heisman Trophy winner and number 1 overall pick who's trending upward, Young likely will be looking for top-of-the-market contract. He can help himself with a Pro Bowl-type season and another trip to the playoffs. Look, this is something we can figure out way down the line, right? Like, the 4th-year quarterback playing really well and playing himself into some more money, it's a pretty decent problem to have, if you ask me. Like, I don't care what the Panthers end up paying Bryce Young, because whatever it is, it will be indicative of what he did on the football field to earn that contract. And if that's enough, then you know what? Max him out. If they make a playoff run and win a football game in the postseason this year, max him out. I don't care. It's going to happen, just not this moment. That being said, what do you guys think? As it currently stands, does Bryce Young deserve an extension to be the long-term starting quarterback here at Carolina Panthers? Y for yes, N for no. Could be a simple question, could be a little more complicated. If you want to give me your explanation, let me know down below. Y for yes, N for no on Bryce Young deserving an extension or not. Next up, are the Panthers going to be big spenders in free agency? Well, as it currently stands, no. They only have about $12.9 million in available cap space, which ranks around the middle of the league. But they can certainly open some up. The cap is fake, guys. Every team's going to have 40, 50 plus million to work with when it's all said and done, at least the vast majority of teams out there. And in terms of spending that money this offseason, there's one position where it kind of feels like a treasure trove of talent, and that is the edge rusher spot. And luckily for the Panthers, their edge rushing spot stinks. So they can absolutely go bring in some blue chip talent this offseason. That's absolutely the position to spend big on when you look at some of these free agent edge rushers that are out there this offseason. Trey Hendrickson, one of the best edge rushers in all of football. A guy who had 17.5 sacks in back-to-back seasons. 31 years old, getting up there a little in age. I would give him a 2 or 3 year deal and pay him upwards of $25 million a season, maybe even closer to 30. Jalen Phillips, a guy who has been often injured throughout his career, but when he is healthy, he's one of the better young pass rushers in this league. Just 26 years old, had a solid outing and stint with the Philadelphia Eagles this past season. It's going to be pretty difficult for them to bring him back with the contract that he's asking for. Both Trey Hendrickson and Jalen Phillips are going to be looking at deals in the realm of $100 million. but I'd be okay with the Panthers paid it up. They'd be much more improved in that pass rushing game. Khalil Mack, I can't see him making a cross-country move from LA to Carolina here at age 34. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Odafe Owe, that's a guy I could see making a move here and maybe getting a bit overpaid by one of these big spending teams in free agency. I'm not the biggest fan of Owe. I would rather take the risk on a guy like Bradley Chubb, who, yes, has been injured, but when he is out there on the football field, he gets to the quarterback, stacks up pressures and sacks year in and year out. 2 years older as well, but I would go for the cheaper option in Chubb than Owe, who might get a big-time overpay this spring. The Panthers, remember, are not a team that will shy away. At least Dan Morgan will not shy away from offering up big-time contracts. Last offseason, the Panthers had a massive offer on the table for Milton Williams. He ended up deciding to go to the New England Patriots. For what reason, I'm not 100% sure, but it probably had something to do with thinking the Patriots could turn things around and win a lot of football games this year. And what'd they do? They made the Super Bowl. So I hope Dan Morgan sees that he didn't land that big fish last offseason and goes out there and spends for one this spring, because a move like that, it could be a big-time contributor into you taking the next step as a franchise and vaulting yourself into Super Bowl contention. Look, they need to create cap space to throw out a monster offer like that, but does not matter. They can cut guys, they can restructure guys, and they can even trade someone or extend somebody to make some more money work and open everything up they want to do in free agency. That's all going to come in a couple of weeks, and we're going to keep you guys tabbed in with everything that you need to know in terms of the Panthers creating cap space. But with that being said, let's move on to our final thing that we have for you, as for our guy Joseph Person, talking at The Athletic, Panthers free agents. So we talk about the guys the Panthers could sign. What about the guys the Panthers could end up losing in free agency? Well, they already made one move this offseason. They brought a fan favorite back, the oldest player on the roster, long snapper J.J. Jansen. He was brought back on a new deal for 1 year, and it's an awesome guy to have in the locker room. He embodies what it is to be a Carolina Panthers. Been here for every single regime, including both Super Bowl appearances. You want to have him back in that locker room. But in terms of, the bigger fish on the Panthers books here, Rico Dowdle being the marquee name, in terms of guys that fantasy players would recognize. I think there's a little bit bigger of a free agent on the Panthers books here, but Rico Dowdle is obviously the highlight level player that could be leaving. There is, according to Joseph Person, mutual interest between both sides, or at least interest from the Panthers in bringing him back. But I don't think it's too likely that we see a Rico Dowdle return here. We know what he wants in 2026. He does not want to be sharing the bulk of the carries. He wants to be the main guy in an offense. That's not going to happen with Chuba Hubbard here, and I'm sure the Panthers want to get a little bit more out of Trevor Etienne, as well as Jonathan Brooks coming off of that torn ACL. Can't see Rico Dowdle scoring a big-time payday with the Carolina Panthers. The big contract they actually have that I think is their biggest decision to make this offseason is Cade Mays. SpotRack has his contract projected at about 3 years, $37 million. Could end up being a little bit more than that, given how the center market looks this year, with a bunch of guys at the top, like Connor McGovern and Tyler Linderbaum commanding big-time contracts. That could end up trickling down into a guy like Cade Mays, maybe getting $13, $14, $15 million a season. I would give out this deal if I were the Panthers. 3 years, 37, no questions asked. But it's up to Cade Mays, it looks like, to see what his market looks like as to whether or not the Panthers would end up signing a deal like that. Person talking about Mays saying, the Panthers will likely let Mays test the market. I wish they wouldn't. Whether it makes fiscal sense to keep him. They're expected to employ the same strategy with several of their other free agents who are candidates to return, including Josh Neiman, safety Nick Scott, linebacker Christian Rosenboom, punter Sam Martin, and offensive lineman Brady Christensen, one of their depth guys in that unit. Personally, I'd bring back Sam Martin. He was the best punter in football last year. I know you don't want to be punting too often, but that's something that I would like to have, a very much buttoned-up special teams unit here. I'd bring back Nick Scott, but I don't know if I would give him as much of a role as he had in 2025. I think I might, make him more of a depth piece, make him maybe the third safety on this roster rather than the first or the second. So I'd bring him back, but maybe in a reduced role. And then, Josh Neiman, I would have to bring him back considering the situation at the tackle spot right now, especially if they don't address it in the draft. But free agency is first, so they probably are going to be end up bringing back Josh Neiman. Now, in terms of Christian Rosenboom, I'm just going to let him walk. I don't think he's that good, guys. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you could flame me in the comment section. He's just not that good. He can't cover, and the Panthers need more guys who can cover over the middle of the field. Brady Christensen, kind of indifferent about. Would bring him back. You need depth offensive linemen. Austin Corbett's a free agent as well. So I would consider bringing him back there. And, I just think the Panthers roster should look a little bit different than it did. I don't think there's always it's not always the right thing to bring back all the guys that you have as impending free agents here. So those are the 3 names that I would 100% bring back here. What about you guys? Name a player the Panthers should re-sign this offseason. Who should return out of the Panthers free agents on their books? Let me know who that is down in the comment section, as that will do it for today's show. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, youtube.com/Panthers Today, for the latest and greatest on your Carolina Panthers all offseason, and especially this week as well. Massive, massive week at the Combine. Dan Morgan speaking. Dave Canales is speaking. We're going to bring you guys everything that you need to know in terms of players coming to the Panthers for visits and all that and more. Subscribe, turn those noties on. We'll see you guys next time. And as always, keep pounding.